Chat with Frank Palmer, the marketing, media, and communications talk show. With Chris Staples. Presented by LifeWorks. Thank you to all our sponsors.
And it's really a pleasure for me to be able to say you're our very, very first guest.
I am so honored. It's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Ad Chats is essentially about me interviewing very interesting people like yourself, industry professionals, to get a little bit of information about what makes them tick and their personalities and what they've done, especially for our industry. And the topics, of course, will be about marketing and strategy and talking about what clients, some clients are good clients, some clients are maybe not as good as others. But we're hoping that this series becomes very interesting for nabs and that we can obviously raise some more funds to be able to get out to more individuals, because we are living in an even more difficult time now because of COVID-19. And of course, now we're trying to figure out ways to get people back to the office. Some people don't want to come back. And that will be one of the questions I'm going to ask you as we move forward as to what you're doing in that area, if anything. I mean, we're trying to figure that out. But as I said, we want to do this because there's a lot of people that have fallen on hard times in nabs previously before COVID. And to let others know that we're going to maybe try to get a little bit more information about you, because I know there's a lot of people that want to know how you've become so successful, what you've done, and have a lot of followers. So interesting as we move along. So anyways, it's you did a book, and I know that in this book, which you sent me a copy of, a signed copy, about rethinking the industry and rethinking the business. And you had some titles in there that were quite interesting, because when I looked up your index, you had one in there that I kind of liked right off the bat, about no assholes. And I know that I can share that with you too, because we've had a few in our life working for us as well as clients. And this is not to really go out there to sort of pinpoint any of them who they are, but we've all had to deal with some of these in our life. And so, or the cocktail party test, which is another one I found interesting, or flat structure, shared leadership. Terry O'Malley, which we both know, who's been very successful in the leadership and on the tour, is going to be one of our future guests down the road. And Terry and I know each other from years ago. And he said about your book, Rethinking the Business of Creativity, inspiring look under the hood.
Yes.
And I guess in one way, if I wanted to title this one, it could be a look under the hood of Chris Staples and what makes him tick.
Sure.
So I know that we won't be able to cover everything off of this under the hood in a 60 seconds, but I think it's going to paint a fairly unique picture of you and how you've been successful along with your other two partners.
Yeah.
You grew up in a city called Denver, Alberta, right?
Well, it's not it was 1,200 people. So it was hardly a city, but yeah, a small town.
How does a guy in that little 1,200, what schools what did you attend back there? Did you go
both my parents were teachers, so the house was full of magazines, and I would read the magazines compulsively, not for the articles so much, but for the ads, and especially the car ads. I just love looking at ads for Lincoln Continentals and Thunderbirds and stuff like that. And they were very cheesy ads when I look back at them now, but I was so inspired that I started trying to create my own car ads. And so I would create brands of cars like Saturn. This was years before Saturn came out, or Colt or Pony. And I would come up with little taglines and stuff. And so I knew I wanted to be in advertising. But I had no idea how to do it, like being in this small little town in Alberta. So I didn't even know there were schools where you could learn how to be an ad writer. And what I thought is, I'll go and I'll learn how to write. That's how I'll start. So I'll go take journalism. I'll go to Ottawa from Devon, Alberta, and learn journalism. And then I'll get into advertising through the back door. And that's what I did. And unfortunate. I did learn how to write, and I learned a lot of other good things at journalism school, but I didn't learn how to make ads. So when I came back to Edmonton to try and find a job, I didn't have a book. I had no ads. I hadn't created anything. So I got into an agency in Edmonton on the strength of a letter. It was 9 reasons you should take a chance on a green kid like me. And I got this job, but I didn't know what I was doing. So it was quite a story.
Well, it's very interesting because we have a little video that's about a minute long. We could play just so you can look at it. And here you are sitting along 2 young kids trying to get into the industry, and you're telling them that they're going to do 10,000 ads before they do a good one.
Right.
Can you play that little link for us?
You have about 10,000 bad ads in you right now.
Yep.
And you got to get them out as quickly as possible so that you can get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
So don't think that, you're going to graduate and then bam, I'll be on a TV set next year. I know that's not going to happen. But it's okay to be bad in your first few years. It's okay to make mistakes, and you should be in a place where there's not too much pressure on you so that you can make those mistakes.
Right.
So if you got an offer at a bad agency right out of school, take it. Take it. If they're doing bad ads, that's perfect, because that's all you know how to do too. I think that you can really make the mistake of choosing an agency based on what it is now versus what it can be. And all I know is that one person and a small group of people can make a huge difference in an agency and actually change the culture of an agency. So even if you're in a bad agency or one that's not hot right now, you can help turn that around. And it's really helpful sometimes to know what a bad agency is like, because then when you go to a good agency, you treasure it.
Right.
If you start out at a great agency and the pressure's too much, and you're doing bad ads because you don't know any better, and you flame out because you have a nervous breakdown that you've inflicted on yourself, there's nowhere to go but down. And I always think it's better to start at the bottom, like Drake said.
You probably remember that well.
Yeah.
Well, it was very interesting because I know that when you came to Palmer Jarvis at that time, we were not a very good agency. And if I remember you getting mad at me because I did an ad that had a hot tamale on it or something like that, saying we were hot when we were not hot.
I wrote that ad.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. So, I mean, I remember very distinctly about 22 years ago when I was walking the seawall and went out to find a creative director, and was talking to Ron Woodall, as you know. And he asked me why I wanted to hire him. I said, well, I wanted to improve our ratings in the creative area. And I said, we were so bad that I was so upset about going to these award shows and coming in last all the time. And he said, what do I have to do? I said, I'm not going to give you any instructions. He said, okay, I'll take the job. But then he didn't want to be the creative director, and he offered you that job, and you didn't want it.
Well, yeah, because I was 33. I still had not won any awards. I didn't know how to do ads still. This was 8 years into almost 10 years into my career. I still was doing terrible ads. And you know what, Frank, I was just glad to have a job at that point. And you were my last resort. I knocked on every door in Vancouver and got the door slammed in my face. And then you guys hired me, and I couldn't believe it. I was a creative director in Edmonton, but I took a 50% pay cut and went back to being a junior copywriter just to be in Vancouver and work at Palmer Jarvis. So,
well, I think that when he said, well, if you're not going to do this, I'll hire somebody else. And you said, okay, I'll take it.
Then I thought I'd do it. And you know what? I just give you such credit, Frank, for you had everything. The agency wasn't winning a lot of awards, but you were successful. You were on the cover of magazines. You had the big accounts in town. You were kind of a legendary guy, but you weren't satisfied, and you wanted to improve the creative product. And we set this crazy goal. I think we were number 66 on the creative report card.
Yeah.
And we wanted to go to number 1.
Yeah.
And we did. And
we did.
That is one of the great stories, I think, in Canadian advertising.
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions about the awards that you've won over the years, which are probably not too many that are remaining. But you also said that you wanted to avoid being like that Darren guy on the TV show Bewitched. You didn't want to be that ad guy. You wanted to be the creative guy. He wasn't the creative guy, or was he?
It was kind of unclear. It made it seem like he did everything. He wined and dined the clients, came up with the strategy, and then came up with the ads. So that's why I was kind of confused about what an ad person does. But what I didn't want was to work for a jerk, and he worked for a jerk. And he'd get called at all hours of the night and have to do humiliating things for clients. And one thing that was so great about you, Frank, is you were never a jerk, and you were you had such a great way with clients. You never debased yourself, I don't think. It was always mutual respect with these clients, and I think that's a great thing that I've taken away.
Well, I've always said that we're in the relationship business.
Yes, what we do is a byproduct of trust.
Right. You remember that? You remember?
Of course.
Well, one of the things that I remember about Chris Staples was that in many ways you're a very shy guy.
Yeah.
Until you get into the boardroom and a pitch, and all of a sudden you turn into a bulldog.
Yeah.
How does that all come about? Like if I talk to you, like right now, you're very outward, and you know me, and you trust me. I'm not going to ask some stupid questions, or maybe I might. But
yeah,
the fact is, we have this relationship. But I found you over the years very quiet.
Yeah. But
when you go to a pitch, all of a sudden, it's just this guy can't stop from selling.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When I was early in my career, I wasn't confident in my abilities because I didn't know what I was doing. And there was also this other complicating factor that I was this gay guy in the 90s. And I was kind of never in the closet, but I didn't want people I didn't want to talk about my personal life. So I never would lie and say that I had a girlfriend or anything, but I just didn't want to talk about my personal life. So you were great about that. And you know what, Frank, this is another thing that people maybe don't know about you. One of the reasons I couldn't get a job anywhere is because people knew I was gay. And somebody told you that this is a great story, that, you shouldn't hire that guy because he's gay. And you said, I don't care. And you hired me. So that it seems impossible that would have happened in 1990, but it did. And, so that's why I was a quiet guy. But I knew how to turn it on.
Remember, this is about you. I'm talking to you, and thank you very much for the kudos on this, but I didn't care. You
didn't care, and
I don't care.
So, but that's why I was a quiet guy, and that's why
I don't think I've ever heard that story before.
Yeah. So
very interesting. You and Tom and Ian obviously have different roles with the agency, but you kind of like the three amigos, or the Three Musketeers and that kind of stuff. And each and every one of you obviously complements each other and know you guys all very well. What one characteristic or two do you think that's very important for leaders like yourself in this industry to have, and why? For me, it's all about trust.
I know. Yeah. And you know what? I think that for us, we each brought something different to the table. Tom was sort of our trust relationship guy. He's very good. He learned from you how to do that. Ian is a pure artist who would fight for the best idea and always try to improve things. And I was more of the front man who could sell the ideas and help contribute to the culture. So I think that the three of us all added something. And when we started out, we decided that we would not have a president because we saw each of us as being so integral to the success of Rethink. And I think it was a good decision. And we've still structured the company that way. It's run by basically three people now, and a new generation. And three works great because you have to come to quick decisions because you'll be outvoted, and you can never be deadlocked because there's never a tie vote. So we would make decisions very, very quickly that way. And it turned out to be a good way of working.
Do you have any idea what you think your greatest strength is, other than creative talent and a weakness? I mean, it's just curious.
My greatest strength is not, I'm not the best creative person in the world. There's better writers than me. I've won awards and things, but I had a slow start. So it's not on the creative side. What I think I can do more than anything is I can be pretty tenacious in changing a culture, moving a culture, protecting a culture, And I think that's my biggest strength.
Yeah, well, I do too. I've had the pleasure over the number of years of watching you work. I still remember going into some of these pitches and then watching the dynamics of the room change once the creative is being unleashed by you, and watching the client. Because one of the things that I was going to ask you, if you didn't make it in this career, did you have a second choice? Because I wanted to be a cop.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about that.
And I still want to be a cop.
I think you've got too big a heart. You're too.
Well, I could be Columbo. I could be Columbo.
You could be
I know, but there's one last question I want to always ask. But I think that what I saw in the room, in a pitch with you, or number of them, was that there came this bond between you and the client almost immediately. That you had their interests at heart. And you were going to do whatever you could to make this be successful. And maybe that's one of the things that remain true to this day with you and Rethink.
Yeah, well, one of the things we always say is that you shouldn't pitch anything unless you believe in it. And if you believe in it, you got to show people you believe in it. And when I believe in something, I really believe in it. And I think clients love that they know that it's more than just about the contract or the money. It's because you want to help create more believers for their brands. And I think that's pretty infectious when it becomes really clear that you're there for that reason.
How do you decide on the asshole clients that you don't want to work with?
Well, you know what? It's funny. And you know this, oftentimes there's quite a long process for choosing agencies. And I think a lot of people in the agency business think that that's a one-way street, that that's about the clients putting agencies through the ringer and really trying to figure out who's the best. The way we look at that process is we never complain about it because it gives us a chance to see what these people are really like and whether we like them. And you know what, if we believe in the brand, but don't like the people, we'll find a way just to sort of walk away from the pitch process and not take it further. Because nothing, you know, really in the end, the business is so simple. Hire the right people and choose the right clients. And if you do that, that's all you have to worry about. So
how do you pick an ideal client?
Generally, there's some connection to one of us who has a passion about it. It's possibly because they're doing good in the world. IKEA is a great example. Yes. You know, they're doing all these things around sustainability and stuff. Oftentimes there's a personal connection. When I was growing up in Devon, my dad would drive 40 miles with A&W takeout. And that was my first and only restaurant meal till I was 15 years old. So I loved that brand and it was our first client.
Never knew that.
If there's a connection like that and you tell those stories and it comes from the heart, it's pretty irresistible.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you're doing for A&W, and obviously they're doing very well with their services and their products, and they're launching this new chicken now. I haven't tried yet.
They are. It's very spicy. Yeah. Be careful.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an unreasonable situation with a client and had to sort of say, I'm not working?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to tell me a name.
Well, I will give the name because I don't care really. We've famously fired some high profile clients, and I don't want to sound arrogant here. It's just because it was so clear that we weren't compatible. One of them was Nike,
really?
Us in Canada. And we were just being put through the ringer, creating these elaborate decks for Portland to look at in 24-hour notice. And it seemed like the product was really the decks, not the ads. So after 6 months of 100 decks, we had nothing to show for it. And we thought, you know what, life's too short. And we want to, Nike's a great brand and there's very smart people that work there, but we want to get stuff out in the world. And advertising is not that complicated, and it shouldn't be that hard to do great advertising for a great brand.
Well, it's interesting because when I see an ad on television or I see a new stunt or a beer fridge, I automatically think that you guys did it, even if you didn't do it, because normally I go, damn. you know, here they go again. They've up one ship somebody again. So do you have, when you get on inspiration, do you have a mentor or two or three that you look to for advice?
You know what? I've had really good mentors. You've been one of them, Ron Woodall. I still talk to, on Wednesday, I had a nice chat with Ron. Yeah. So I've always tried to really sit and listen to the stories of people who are more experienced in the business. And you just take away great little anecdotes that you can use in your life. So I've been more inspired by the people I've worked with than industry legends or people like that. Yeah.
I had two that were tough people. One was the leader at the time of Vickers and Benson, and I would actually go to see him and say, I've got this person in the agency who's causing me nothing but problems and pushing me around, and I'm the president and I can't figure it out. And he'd go, you mean you don't know what the problem is? I said, I have no clue. They're pressuring you. What do you mean they're pressuring me? And it was true. They were trying to be a bit of a bully, and I was kind of figuring out, well, why did that happen? And anyways, it comes to the point that we sold, as you know, to DDB. I got a little bit of money for that and stayed around for 20 years and left it after they started to change it and wouldn't leave me alone. Was the most important risk that you took leaving?
Yeah. And you know what, Frank, I didn't want to leave. If you had not sold, I would still be working with you. I don't know. I don't know if you believe that, but I honestly believe that's true, because I don't really have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I'm not that guy. Yeah. Tom and Ian came to me and said, listen, Tom's always wanted to have an agency, and we've worked together our whole careers. So yeah, and I just thought, you know what, the time's right, because we could start to see some of the changes that were happening with Omnicom. But I got to give you guys credit. Like we were so arrogant. We thought, oh, when we leave, Palmer Jarvis will collapse, blah, 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 all this stuff. But of course, it was a kick in the pants, right? And you guys kept going strong and did better work for 10 years against incredible odds, against, like, I know what those guys are like. You've talked to me about what they're like. They're like sharks. And every quarter you're on the phone and doing these presentations. And so credit to you, man. Like, it's so stressful to do great work in those.
Well, what's happened is that we use those people, product and profit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for a lot of the holdcos is profit.
Yes.
And I was able to keep them away from that, even though we gave them a good profit. But then over time, it just got so bearing that, they didn't care. At least they say they do, but they didn't. But anyways, it was a very interesting. And I know at the time, it was after you leaving and taking two other very important individuals with you, it was, for me, it was even a stronger will to continue to exist and do well, and prove that we could still do that. And I know that we did. So what do you think that has been one or two of your best accomplishments during your career that you've been most proud of? Obviously, growing the agency to be, the awards you guys have won over the years is unbelievable. But
you know what? I'm proudest of the long relationships we have. We got A&W in 1999, about a month after we left. And we were in this office that we had found. It was a condemned office building. It didn't have heat and it didn't have, it only had cold water, no hot water. And it was a dump, man. And A&W came and believed in us. And so I'm so proud of those long relationships we've had. And then the other thing I'm proud of is I am very proud of my partnership with Tom and Ian, and the fact that we've had just not only created great ads, which is wonderful, but we've had great lives. We take holidays. We never missed holidays. And when we go on holidays, we don't check in with each other. It's a point of pride. You never check your email. You never phone in. Even if the office burnt down, we had a rule, you never get bothered on holidays. So I've seen the world. I've got great friends and family, and I feel like I've sacrificed nothing. And so that's the second thing I'm proud of.
That's great. One of the guys that was working for us, Bill Baker, has done very well, as you know, and I follow him on Instagram, and he's building a farm.
I know, he's a friend of mine, and I'm watching him build that farm on Facebook too. And yeah, you know what? I think this is something coming from Vancouver, and you and I have talked about this a lot over the years. There is, we play tough here and work hard, but everybody goes home for dinner at 6. And even when we were, you know, transforming Palmer Jarvis, there was balance. And I hope that we've been able to bring a little bit of that spirit to Toronto and Montreal.
Well, I've always had this. I've had when we ended up doing the deal with DDB, they said, "Do you feel that you want to just own the West that you had, or do you want to feel that you should take over Toronto?" I said, "Well, if we want to be a multinational or international or whatever it happens to be, we need a Toronto office."
Yeah.
But for the longest period of time, Toronto really hated me.
Oh, tell me about it. I knew
being
too.
President of their company on the West Coast, and they went out of their way to try to make that not work.
Oh, I know. Well, there's a real bias. I think it's worse. It's not bad in the States at all. Like Wyden and Kennedy, Goodby Silverstein, these agencies are seen as leaders on the West Coast, but in Canada, I think we're a little bit behind. And I think 90% of the business is in Toronto. So it tends to be more Toronto centric, but yeah, you know what? I think there's been real movement, and you were the first pioneer, you know, to come from the West and move East.
Well, and you've seen how many other agencies have not been successful in doing that. In fact,
I know it's hard.
Multinationals who have come here tried to run it here, even with a West Coast person, they still haven't been successful.
No.
So, how do you feel about our industry now? Are we moving in the right direction? Is the industry challenged now because of a number of other issues, not only just COVID, but are we moving in the right direction?
I totally am super optimistic, and I think it's never been better. And here's why. I think we were collectively freaked out about the death of the TV commercial and the rise of digital media for about 10 years. Nobody knew how to handle it and what to do. And now what you see is, you know, once we figured out, certainly for me at Rethink, once we figured out that it's just storytelling in different forms and you can tell stories anywhere, to me, that was when the light bulb went on. And you don't need the 30-second ad. It's so restricting. You know, you can tell longer stories in several chapters in shorter bursts, and it's exciting. And I don't know, are you on TikTok, Frank?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. Yeah.
You know what? TikTok is the best thing ever. And it is real competition for Netflix and all the networks. And think about it. TikTok is pieces of content that are under 60 seconds long. That's like the length of an ad. That's perfect for us. That's what people want to watch. It's just a series of short little bursts. And you can put advertising content in there that's entertaining and funny and great. And you can tell stories better than you ever have that are personalized for people. So I am very, very excited. And
so how do you charge for that now?
You know what? You don't worry about that part of it first. That's for somebody else to worry about. You worry about telling the stories and creating the content and creating things in the world that people talk about. The money takes care of itself.
Yeah, I like that. I've always said it. I said, you know me, and I've always been an opinionated person. You know, I either believe in something or I call bullshit. I don't believe in that. You're just trying to do. I think you're kind of the same kind of person in many ways. You go, hey, Frank. I mean, one thing with me, you've never, Frank, I think you're full of it. This is what I think we should do. And here's why. I've always appreciated you coming back to me and challenging me on different things. So do you have any books that you inspire you that you would also recommend maybe people to read just to get another point of view?
You know, there's do you know a Vancouver writer named Eckhart Tolle? He wrote The Power of Now. And it's not about advertising. It's about meditation and living in the moment and being fully present in the moment. And that book changed my life. And, you know, I remember even in the 90s, there was a guy named Lou Tice. Remember him?
Lou Tice, yeah.
And he sort of taught similar lessons. And I think there's so much to be learned in those kinds of books. and around, what you're filtering in and filtering out, what you're focusing on. So those kinds of things I really enjoy, but I really try to read a lot of like fiction and novels, just because I think it gives you a sense of empathy for other people, and you put yourselves in the shoes of different people. And I think that's a really great skill to have as an ad person.
Yeah, I think when you watch those TikToks, and also when you're in that moment that you just talked about, there's an aha moment. You go, oh,
yeah.
And that to me is so inspiring, is that
Mm.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Well, how did you think of that?
Yeah.
So I would say, do you still have those aha moments? I mean, does
You know what? My aha moments were never with the big idea. I was more the editor in chief who had the ability to look at a table full of ideas scribbled on pieces of paper and say, you know what, I think that those ones I think have real potential. So that was my big skill. And then to be able to take those little ideas from scribbles on a napkin to a finished product, relatively intact, that's where my skill set came in. And I think I still have those skills, but you know what? Here's the thing. I think on the creative side of the business, it does matter once you get past 60. And you don't want to be that guy trying to, say, oh, the 18-year-olds are really going to love this. Because I don't think people believe it. You're on the different side of the business, right? You're on the relationship side. So your skills will never age out. But I think a creative person's skills do. It's a little like a hockey player, a professional hockey player. You have a window, and there's the occasional Gordie Howe, but not many. And I'm not Gordie Howe.
No, but I think maybe when you say what you said on your napkins, this is maybe where you got peer review from, because
that's where we got peer review, and from Ian, yes.
And you put all these up on a wall, and you'd have everybody walk by and put their comments on it, even if they weren't creative. They might have been.
Yes, especially if they weren't creative. Yes.
Yeah, I think that. Are you still creating kind of things like that?
We're still doing it that way, and that's how we turned around Palmer Jarvis, is through that system, which Ian learned at Art Center, where he went to school just before he got hired. And they would just leave their sketches in the hallway, and people would write scathing little remarks on them. And we tried to do the same thing. And we talked to people in accounting and the account people and everybody. And if everybody likes an ad when it's a scribble on a napkin and everyone laughs at it or gets emotional about it, you're guaranteed you got a hit.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, getting back to the office, but I thought there's some questions here from the audience that sort of was asking some questions that they wanted to ask. And one of them was,
that's always cool. Yeah.
Yeah, even though they've asked you these questions in advance, how important have awards been to the growth of your company?
Very important, but they're very dumb and shallow and stupid, but necessary. And if you understand that they are not the product, they're a byproduct of doing work that gets talked about, but they're an important byproduct, because that byproduct buys you press and buys you a buzz. And that's what clients respond to. Like our Heinz, we did this world's slowest puzzle for people during pandemic for Heinz ketchup. And it was 570 pieces that were all just red. And you know what? That got on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and that was the true award. And then a year later, when we entered it in all the shows, it won all these awards, but that's not what was first. What was first was getting on Jimmy Fallon. And that's when you know that you've hit it. And so that's what we try to do. And awards are stupid. You know what? I've won so many. They matter so much to you earlier in your career, and that's good. You almost have to have this irrational love of awards. But then once you've won them all, you realize that was kind of dumb, but it was useful.
Well, it's funny when you said the Jimmy Fallon show and a stunt was, do you have a favorite ad campaign that was a stunt? Or
well, you know what? Almost all of our campaigns, especially these days, you could call stunts. It's a bit pejorative, but what we try to do is, you talked about the beer fridge, which we did for Molson. We try to create something physical, like a puzzle or a beer fridge or something that's an actual object. And sometimes it takes, working with technology companies to figure it out, or finding a puzzle maker during pandemic, which can be hard. And then we make this thing and put it out in the world. And then the ad is basically just a video of us putting that out into the world. So Beer Fridge would be my favorite sort of stunty type thing that we did, because it ran for 3 or 4 years and really increased Molson Canadian's share, which was wonderful. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Do you think you could have done this if you were part of a multinational, or is it more?
Yes, I could have. I think so, but at great cost to myself and everyone else. And I don't think, you know, when you asked earlier what I was proud of, I don't think I would have had that balanced life. I think I would have been stressed out, and I think everyone would have been stressed out. And this is why I admire the multinational agencies that are doing the great work. They're there to be so admired, but they're doing it at a great personal price, I think.
Yeah, I think if you picked all the multinational agencies that are not, I want to say that are owned by holdcos, not like the Whedon and Kennedy, who said they will never, ever.
No, they can't. Their shares are in trust.
Yeah. So the point
We
is
copied
that,
them. Our shares are in trust as well.
oh, really?
Our shares can never be sold. Rethink can never be sold to a multinational.
So if somebody wants to sell their shares, they have to sell it within the share structure.
We went to a partnership structure, Frank. We're now like Deloitte or KPMG or a law firm where everybody's a partner. When they leave, and there's no shares to cash out.
So when's that for Chris Staples leaving?
Oh, you know what? I'll be a partner forever, I think, but not a managing partner. And you know what? I love being around. We do this thing called Founder FaceTime, where we do three times a year. We do Zoom calls with anybody at the agency who wants to talk to us. So that's always exciting and interesting. But you know what? I crossed everything off my list. I'm very proud of what I've done. And life is wonderful and big, and the world is amazing and huge. And there's so much to see and do that I'm ready to look at that now.
Okay, give me the one client that you would love to work with that you've never had been able to reach out to get. Is there one?
You know what? It's a client that you had, Volkswagen. And one of my heroes in advertising was Bill Birnbach, which was exciting because of DDB. And those ads still, the lemon ad, all those print ads that DDB did, they're wonderful. And I have a book of them all, and if you look at them, they're just wonderful. So even with all the scandals and stuff, I would still, based on my childhood drawing cars, I would love to work on a car, and I would love to work on Volkswagen.
Yeah, I am a car nut, as you know, and I love cars, and Volkswagen was a really, really good client. And the story at that time was I had Volkswagen, but it was in our other agency.
Yeah, you flipped them.
I flipped them, and I was one of the only guy that was able to flip them, because it comes back to the stress factor again. I was told by the United States, they said, we want you to pitch Volkswagen in DDB. And I said, I won't pitch them. And they said, why? I said, well, because I already have them. And I also have Subaru. And I heard if I have to pitch them, everybody's going to know I'm pitching, and I'm going to lose Subaru. So if they give me the Volkswagen business, I'll do it in DDB.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the client, and the client gave us the business. I didn't have to pitch it.
Yeah, that was one of your ninja moves of all time.
And it's just, and then what happened at the end of the day is that Volkswagen Europe decided they wanted to go to a North American pitch, and we had to repitch it. We had no choice. And the last pitch was done by DDB New York.
Yeah.
And they lost it.
Yeah.
And we lost it.
Yeah.
So there's the problem sometimes with international. You go with the flow. I'm not saying you don't win things the same way. You sometimes you get, hey Frank, we just won the XXX, and lucky you're going to get X amount of money. You didn't have to do anything. So there's the good side, and there's also the bad side. But right now, for me, it's being DDBs on the name, but I'm independent. So there's a bit of both. So
full circle. It's great.
A couple more questions, Chris, and then I'm going to want you to think about the last question, which you could answer first as you want. Are mom and dad proud of you?
Yeah, totally. But you know what? They're, as I said, they were teachers, and they kind of had a hands-off approach to my brother and sister and I, and were supportive, but didn't really meddle. And I've tried to be the same kind of parent to the people I work with at Rethink, for sure.
Yeah.
And you were like that too. You just let,
Well,
let people
my
do.
mom and dad never got, unfortunately, to see where their son ended up being an only child, but I still think that they would probably find it interesting that their son has done well. But people said to me in an interview, it wasn't me, it was the people who were alongside of me that helped me get to where I was.
That's totally true, Frank.
Because you don't get to where you are without other people helping you. So
yeah, exactly.
My last question would be to you, and then we plug nabs a little bit here because it's really important to get to their support line. They can reach out and get your, if you had a website or something you wanted people to follow on you, because there was a reason I wanted you to be my first guest, and a reason that people would probably want to reach out to you privately and ask you a question. I know you'd probably be open-minded to do that.
Sure.
But COVID-19 right now is a bit of a frustration for me because you run our own surveys, you watch everybody else's surveys, and all of a sudden 30% or 40% of the people don't want to come back to the office. And for me, it's important to have people in the office. I don't want to put people in harm's way, but the fact is, I don't think I can build the same kind of culture from a distance.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
So,
I think that the trick is just to be patient. People have been through an awful lot. And we're finding that in Vancouver, particularly, a lot of people want to stay working away from the office. At Rethink, we have a chapter in the book called this. It's everybody talks about work from home during COVID. We've had a thing for 20 years called wooing, which is working out of the office. And so you were always allowed at Rethink to work from home, or to work from a cafe, or work from a library. And even at Palmer Jarvis, that's where most of my good ads came. In my partner Mark Mascala's living room, we came up with stuff. So we're very open to it. I think that it's a balance. And I think people are going to gradually come back to it. But we have to make it special and worthwhile coming into the office, not just a grind where you sit in meetings. It should be fun and exciting and inspiring. And you should want to come because you feel like you're missing out terribly if you don't, as a person and for your career as well. And so that's our job. And we'll be patient and wait for people to come around.
Chris, this has been fantastic.
Good.
And I think a really good interview, because having you as our first person to share their experiences and get into the various topics about what made you successful, the trials and tribulations of running an agency from the West, particularly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm going to want to be able to talk to Noel O'Day in the future.
Yes, he's such a great guy.
Yeah, and
I admire them so much.
Running an agency from the other side of Canada in a small market, you got to give him credit.
Frank, have you seen that tourism stuff he does for Newfoundland? It's brilliant. Brilliant. It made me go to Newfoundland, and it lived up to it. So
I've been there on a couple of occasions on a network called TCAN, that they have their meetings in various cities, and we've always gone out there. And I actually almost got kicked out of TCAN on my very first meeting, and it was in Newfoundland. And I'm being the practical joker that and George Jarvis was with me at the time, and we'd been drinking a little bit. And we got into the restaurant with all these other TCAN members, and I started throwing buns.
Oh, Frank, I've been there, man.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope the viewers, when they see it, have enjoyed this. And thank you. Best wishes. Stay healthy, my friend. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And
that's great, Frank. Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to reach out to me on anything, my email is chris@rethinkcanada.com.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, support nabs. Go on to support line. And we look forward to coming out with this shortly on YouTube. along with the sponsors and everybody else. And there'll be an agenda coming up with all the other agencies. And maybe we might even have some clients online talking about why they deal with who they deal with and why it's important with their advertising agency and why.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Produced by Nabs.